We'll leave it for third time.
So here we are, Carolyn. we're just in a living room, and we're just having a conversation. Welcome to Scenes Podcast. This is a show where we talk about purpose with inspiring people making a positive impact with their lives. And what we try to do is ask questions that go a bit deeper. So we're getting to the why of what people do. Today we're going to be talking about the history of financial reporting. And it just happens to be that there's about 200 people in the room who are listening in on us. But I'm really fascinated by this topic, partly because I don't know much about it, and I'm curious. But before we talk about financial reporting, I want to hear from you a little bit about your life, and maybe if there's some echoes in the study that you've done that we could trace back to, say, your childhood. So can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think what we've got to say before we start, Steve, is that it can't be the history of financial reporting. It's a mini history in 27.5 minutes or something of what I think. But I guess, you asked me how I came to be here, and that's a really good question. But I grew up in a Christian home, so I volunteered and I, gave and I did all those things that you do. My dad was the Methodist minister. We moved around a little bit. But on reflection, I have this picture in my mind of me sitting in the National Bank in Matamata to go on the signing authority of a charity in my school uniform. So I know that I was a treasurer long before I ever thought about studying accounting. And in fact, I'm a really slow starter. So I was 21 and I went to university part-time to become an accountant because I'd seen that, that was something that I really enjoyed doing. And yes, so I studied part-time for a number of years before I became an accountant, and then could sort of put the right sign on my signature for the accounting that I was doing in the sector and elsewhere.
So we can see echoes, I guess, in what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Back to that childhood and the early involvement in charities themselves.
Yeah, and then I guess around about 2003 when I was doing my Masters, so I was working at Gavin Polytech at the time, and I was doing my Masters at Victoria. And the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, or the Institute as they were then, sent out an advertisement. They wanted people for the not-for-profit sector task force. And you have to go back then. There was the Financial Reporting Act was being reformed. There was the Charities Bill was coming up, and chartered accountants didn't know what to do about it. So I offered all this, selected to go on that task force, and Tony Dale was the chair of that task force. What a fantastic guy he was.
What stood out about him?
He had such a lot of energy for the sector. He wanted really good reporting because he wanted charities to be able to say what they did. He wanted to be able to allow them to tell the story, and just had so much energy and such good standards. So I was on that task force, and he travelled a lot. I ended up chairing it, but when I look around the room, there are people that were either involved in that task force or the committee that set up later. But when we reported, the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand said we had an ambitious program. What did we want to do? We wanted them to know about charities. And here we are today, we're in a conference which Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand has sponsored. We wanted changes to the financial reporting standards for charities. We wanted people to be able to have standards that made sense to them. And what have we got? We've got a full suite of standards. So it was a little while ago, but those dreams they've worked through. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, what I want to do is talk about those things and those recent developments. But I think what often happens with people is that you assume that what you know is what has always been. And so we look at our rules and our regulations and we say, well, that's the way it is. But what I'm really curious to discover is more about the history. So I want you to take us way back. When we had initial emails, he said, do you want me to go back to 1980s? And I said, no, I'm going to go back further. So tell us a little bit about reporting itself.
Yes, so I guess Justice Williams this morning, he said religion was a big part of society back, and he was perhaps in Christendom. I was thinking about what Jerome said yesterday, and can I go back to Egyptian funerary cults in 2700 BC? So we can, we've seen physical copies of if the Pharaoh died, right, he was godlike. So they had these funerary cults, and they needed to keep going because, so they had to be able to redistribute the funds and things, and so the prayers could be said for him. And so on. And so we've seen accounting happening in there, we've seen internal controls, they were tax exempt. So accounting was way back then. And I think if I can just zoom forward to the 19th century in Egypt, because those funerary cults, many of them became, in the end, WAFs, which are the Muslim charities. And in the 19th century, the Egyptian government said, we like what some of you are doing. We want to have some accounts. And if we really don't think that you're doing the right thing with your money, we'll just take that money off you and we're going to use it ourselves. So we see that coming through Egypt. Where else would you like to go?
Well, I think let's jump from Egypt to a few thousand years along the timeline. Tell us a bit more, maybe Middle Ages and around that.
You were in the 8th grade heaven this morning, weren't we? Justice Williams again talked about how he wanted to get married, but actually what he really wanted was the church riches. They owned about a quarter of England at that time, and they got lots and lots of revenue, 3 times as much as he got. And so what would you do? Well, wouldn't you want to take that for yourself if you were the king? And so he became head of the church and head of the land. 1535. It is called a Bella Ecclesiasticus or something, where he went and he surveyed all the churches. They had to say how much money they had to say what the wealth was in the buildings, and so on and so forth. So we had an account.
That's great. And thinking about New Zealand context, where do we see sort of the first signs of accounting here?
Well, I'm not sure if these are the first, but one of the studies I did when I was doing my master's was to look at the Methodist missionaries. So there was a guy called Samuel Lee, and in 1819 he came across here with Marston, and he saw cannibalistic heads. He saw moldy heads on sticks, and he thought, I've got to go. I've got to make them into Christians, and they're awful. And I think Samuel Lee probably learned quite a few things while he was here, but he went to the UK, to England, and he said, there are people out there, they need to know about God. And the Wesleyan Missionary Society said, well, that's all well and good, but the world's a very good place and we don't have any money. So he travelled all around the UK, and he collected goods for barter, because there was no cash in New Zealand anyway at that time. So he had like 100 dozen knives and forks, 100 wedding rings, a tent, I'm sure that would have been useful, spades and fish hooks and all sorts of things.
So he's actually going like village to village and saying, I need donations.
Yeah, you can imagine the sort of the meetings, he's probably in the PowerPoints in those days, but he's painting this picture of these poor people out in New Zealand who really needed to know the Lord. And people were, responding. So he came back here with, who knows how he got all the stuff back here. But where's the accounting, you're going to say? The Wesleyan Missionary Society was not actually that keen when we came here, because it actually did cost them quite a lot of money to get everything here. But every quarter he had to write them a letter, and it was numbered, so there'd no point in on listening. And in those letters there was a thing we call stock take. So he had a list of 21 items down the left-hand side, and across the top he had what he started with, what he had given, what he had got rid of, and what was left. So this was in these quarterly letters. This was in accounting, I think. An accountant today would recognise that.
Yeah. So the financial reports on a quarterly basis, but about how many fish hooks have been bartered.
Absolutely. So he was being accountable to those donors back in the UK.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And you mentioned you went to a museum, right? And, or where was that you saw some of these letters?
Yes, it was at the archives in Christchurch, and the very first archives was Peter over there somewhere. Yes. So it's long before you appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. So take us through now, we're kind of in the 1820s or so. It's funny to think about, it's not that long ago when you think about the millennia, but the Industrial Revolution was happening, sort of coming up. Tell us a little bit about what impact that had on financial reporting.
Yes, so can I go back to the UK at this point?
Yes.
So, and in fact a little bit before that, but there was a guy called Gilbert in 1782, and he was really worried about the poor people in England, and you may be aware that there was a tax basically so that people could be housed in workhouses and they would hopefully get some money and be able to go out into the world and become normal people again. Now, I know that some of those poorhouses were very, very poorly run, and you can go and look at them today. He was concerned about that, so he got this act passed, and by 1786, the poorhouses actually had to send in returns to government of their income and expenditure. But he was also worried about the governance in those poorhouses. And if government didn't like what it saw in those returns, they could add in a guardian, is what they called it, from the community. They would bring this guardian in to make sure that the houses were being run well. But yes, so there was an accounting and there was a governance happening at that time.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because some of the echoes for this conference, like we're still using the same words, the governance and making sure people are accountable.
Yeah.
So what else in terms of Industrial Revolution, the rise of the company, what's going on there?
Yeah, and I guess you've got New Zealand setting up as well, with taking on the UK laws or the English laws at the time, and I think it was about 1860 they took on everything at that point, pre the Charity Act in the UK, so we didn't bring that across. What I wanted to think about was some early structures that we had in New Zealand. So I think we had the Unclassified Societies Act, and this was sort of late 19th century. And so before our Incorporated Societies Act of 1908. And I thought if we didn't have that jolly great wall there, we'd be able to look out and see the Star Boating Club. That's from 1866.
Okay, well tell us about the Star Boating Club. Tell us what's going on there.
It's an unclassified society. And in about 1902, 1903, they had £2,000, which was about £375,000 in today's money. And it was quite substantial. And there'd been a few sporting clubs that had some misdealings with the money. Now, I'm not saying the Star Boating Club did, but some concerned, probably gentlemen in the city, went to the Premier and said, look, the Star Boating Club, they've got this £2,000, we've got to have a proper structure for that because someone's going to do something bad. And that was the genesis of the 1908 Incorporated Societies Act. There might have been some other things too, but one of the very early Incorporated Societies with, of course, a requirement to do financial reporting. Now, we look at that now and it's very, very basic. But back then it was probably a lot of complaints about how much compliance they had to do.
Quite revolutionary at the time. Isn't it fascinating how it all changes?
Well, it is. And in fact, a while ago I was looking at rugby clubs in Wellington, and we were, because some of you might know that the Incorporated Societies register, some of their records were burned in the 90s. But I was able to find some Incorporated Societies that had been deregistered back in the 1930s and so on. So these were rugby clubs. And the files would have things like, dear sir, we didn't know about the requirements under the 1908 Incorporated Society Act. We're sorry that we haven't sent out a form in, but we are just volunteers and all of this sort of stuff. I just thought, in the 21st century, same issues continuing.
Right. Nothing new under the sun, right?
Well, we won't be, completely depressed about that, but no, some of these things do come around Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, take us up a little bit more into modern times, and I guess because I'm really curious to understand what we have now and the more recent history about how we got there. So if you just take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess thinking about, I was going to talk about 2019, I guess, when you know, we'd had IFRS, so for the non-accountants, the International Financial Reporting Standards, which in 2002 New Zealand decided to take on because Australia took it on, and that was for for-profit companies. And then by sort of osmosis, it was applied to the public sector, and the osmosis thing, I guess, is more the not-for-profit sector. And by 2009, there was a lot of consternation that these for-profit standards weren't really fit for purpose, and you know, Ernie and I talked about that, some of the issues that you might see in those standards. And there was no real strategy for financial reporting, so it was moderately reactive. And Kevin Simpkins, who was another one of those wonderful men in financial reporting in New Zealand, was, used to talk to me about his concern about that. And he came in as the chair of what was then the ASRB, to try and deal with those concerns. The Auditor General went to Parliament and said that financial reporting wasn't working. I mean, this isn't just, a few accountants talking in corners. This was the big thing. And that was the forerunner of the XRB and its decision. It is the body to set up the strategy for financial reporting in New Zealand, and its decision to bring in non-profit standards that we can use. And I guess, you might ask me, since that you haven't, why would you want accounting? Well, we thought about accountability to users. And the sorts of things that we could say. At the time, so I'm in 2011, and we're thinking about the charity regulator. It was about to be disestablished in 2012, set up as charity services. And fortunately, we ended up with some research money from that. It was perhaps the only good thing that came out of that. But anyway, we ended up with this research money. And the XRB was very supportive, and we looked at 850 charities that had filed on the register, because what we were trying to find out is if they're going to be new standards, well, what's the current state of financial reporting? So there's 3 students working on that. They did interviews, but we did all sorts of things. We analysed these accounts every which way. What should we be doing? Should we be having something that's really specific? Should we have a different template for churches and for sports clubs and so on? Should we go for something general? Where should the levels be? That was obviously our submissions to Parliament. All of those questions were being asked. But what were we calling off the register? Bank statements, shopping lists, pictures of things, all sorts of stuff that wasn't, you couldn't use it. So I think I've got it on my piece of paper, cowboys. It was a real Wild West. Yeah. So the...
And it's interesting, you're not describing a long time ago, are you? This is less than a decade.
Yeah.
And the people who are involved in this process of coming up with how it's going to look in the future, well, I guess what was the motivation, or what, beyond the details of Clause 1.3a, what was going on, what was going through your mind and others' minds about why we need this?
It was very much about telling the story. So we wanted the highest possible, we wanted legitimate standards that the charity sector wanted to be able to use, because they felt that the standard setter was legitimate. We wanted the charity services to feel that the standards were legitimate. We wanted them to be usable. We wanted them to be useful for users, so that anyone can pick up an annual report and understand what it is that the charity's doing. And the thing about standard setting is it's actually really hard work. I'm going to take my hat off to anybody that does it, staff or people on the boards and things, because it's never perfect. It's not like you sort of put it out there and it's there for the rest of your life. It's an exploration. It's not a complete democracy, but it's not an absolutely just technical issue. So it's quite scary putting that out there. 1st of April 2015, those standards were then about to be used. And it's a scary moment, and you've got to be listening to the feedback, you've got to be working out what else needs to happen. Against that, people using it are like, well, we just want to know what the rules are. So it's very negotiable space.
And the fascinating thing is the tension, I guess, between having the numbers on the page and being accountable and actually being able to tell the narrative, tell the story, which very often is better suited to graphics and pictures and things like that.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the standards that we have, because the performance report isn't just numbers. It is also about those outputs and outcomes that link into your strategy, link into your mission, whatever word you want to use for it. And that's part of the conversation, isn't it? So a charity, doesn't really know what it's there for. Well, then put it at the top. What's it doing to actually work towards its charitable purpose? Okay, let's start measuring it. And I'll use that word with little sort of scare quotes around it, because how do we know that we're starting to achieve what it is that we set out to achieve? And that actually comes around to a whole lot of conversations around not just the board table, but around the members. And then we can communicate that. And some of it links financially. There was a conversation yesterday about the organisation that had zero expenditure, but they did lots of good stuff. Well, this is the space where people can talk about that good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's really, it's fascinating to look back at the history and kind of see where we've come from and what's led us to where we are. In a session that's coming up, we're going to be looking a bit more at the future. Could I just ask for your thoughts about the future and what you think it might look like, choose any time period you want, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, like what are people going to look back, how we do today, and what that 1908 Act came in because of that?
Yeah, I think we're in a very international space. So we're learning, we're watching what other people are doing, but we're also using that to learn. So it's very easy, I'm not sure that I'm going to answer your question, by the way. It's very easy to say, well, we're in a different space, and we don't need to look at what's happening in the States or in the UK or other places. But actually, I think in New Zealand we have looked at what's happening overseas, but we also very much do look at us and we say, well, what is good for New Zealand? So in the future, and just this morning, we've heard people talking about special enterprises, we've heard people talking about structures for Māori organisations. So there's lots and lots of issues that accounting shouldn't drive. We shouldn't be sitting there saying we'll do it this way because that means the accounting will be right. Accounting is the language of business, but it's the servant. And so what we should be able to do is, in the future, use accounting to communicate with the people who want to be communicated with, but also to enable charities to tell the story. So I'm not going to say to you it's going to be in bitcoins or some other way, but hopefully it endures for that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, usually the most powerful answers are not the direct answer to a question.
Steve, you're a wonderful interviewer.
No, it's good. Well, the thing that I've really enjoyed about our conversation is that we do often get too narrowed and focus on what's the situation right now. In particular, I think for the charitable sector and people looking at it and they're looking at what we have to report, what we've explored with you is let's go back a couple thousand years. There's always been a need to account for resources. And the thing that I like about what you've been saying and using, the word empowering, and the way I'm thinking of it is this is actually a tool for charities to be able to connect with their stakeholders across a huge variety, whether they're volunteers or the people who are helping government or whatever. And actually financial reporting is a form of tool that is a helpful thing.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I've written down Whakataki, and I hope my pronunciation is okay, but I just wanted to share this. E kora, e taua, e te whenua ki tahi, ki te raringa, e te whariki, ki mohi tātou, ki e tātou. And it should say the tapestry of understanding cannot be woven by one strand alone, because I found there's been many strands, and I haven't had time to just express my appreciation for the amount of input that has been to this whole process in New Zealand from many of the people in this room and some of the people who haven't been able to join us today.
It's wonderful. If you look out of the room here, people listening can't tell, but there's a lot of faces here. And I know that you would recognize many people who contributed bits of thread into that weaving. Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I really appreciate it. This is a word of mouth type of show where people hopefully will tell other people. It's called Seeds because I love the idea that seeds look like they're dead. But if you plant them, if you give them the right conditions, then they'll grow. And so the stories that we're telling on the podcast is about inspiring other people through hearing stories like yours. And hopefully that then inspires them to be rigorous in what they're doing or starting. So thank you very much today. And if the audience could show their appreciation as well.